October 1st, 2019, next week, marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. It's a big event, so I wanted to write a little bit about it. 2019 has been a year filled with all sorts of anniversaries, and for China's Communist Party, anniversaries matter. They are important because they connect the China of today with a deep well of patriotism, nationalism, and nostalgia. The CPC today often cites its revolutionary history and successes in governing the country as a justification for its continued rule as the center of the country. It has to. The CPC wasn't elected to its position, so it essentially claims a divine right to rule through its history. So these anniversary days are more important than ever before. History matters for the CPC. And to tell you and to emphasize a little bit more about this, I want to turn back to the 1990s and talk about the Soviet Union. The fall of the Soviet Union removed China's foremost rival in the communist world, but it also struck deep fear within the party that one day it too could fall prey to those very same forces. Thus, the Soviet experience of the 1990s has been deeply studied, and its example cited in speech after speech after speech. And the conclusion that the Chinese took from the Soviet experience is that the Soviet Party lost the ability to govern the country forward. It grew old and stale, always expecting the same thing, allowing the economy to weaken and Western liberal forces to seep into society. There is a lot of stuff written about China's crackdown on certain news and freedoms, and most of it I feel is pretty much on the nose, and that implies that the party censors bad news because it doesn't want to be embarrassed by it. Yet at the same time, I think one angle that does not get called out enough is that the Communist Party especially wants to avoid, in the end, the historical nihilism that toppled the Soviet Communist Party. I read through a book called Lenin's Tomb, which discussed how the Soviet Party liberalized in response to a stale economy and weak, aging, and unimaginative leadership. Part of this liberalization took up the analysis of the deeds of the Stalin years. The massacres, the unfair acts, the purges, it all horrified the people and shattered their ideal views of Stalin being this war hero, this great man, and the Soviet Party being this guiding force for all Soviet society. And if the Soviet Party could no longer cite its history as a justification for rule, then it needed something else. For example, the Kuomintang sought democracy and instituted elections. For the Union, though, it meant something else, and that was the fall. To combat this historical nihilism, after all, the CPC has its own skeletons in the closet that it wouldn't want out in the wild. Xi's propaganda style focuses on rah-rah positivity. Here is a recent New York Times article about the Chinese state's crackdown on journalists, and in this quote jumped out at me. Since rising to power in 2012, Mr. Xi had transformed China's media landscape, restoring the primacy of party-controlled news outlets while silencing independent voices. He has said that the mission of the news media should be to spread positive energy and to love the party, protect the party, and serve the party. This reads just like Xi's style. Positive energy all the time, and everything is awesome. When negative energy has to come out, if at all, it is the party who controls its flow and release and almost immediately downplays it. And for those who might question the statement of, how can being positive and believing yourself ever be bad, I want to emphasize that there are times for when a real hard look at things matters. And to help illustrate my point, let us yak about the African swine fever thing. The party took control of outbreak news, tried to sweep it under the rug, and then ended up letting the fever spread across the whole country. And there is a video about it, a couple of videos back. I'll link to it in the notes. Mao has always said that the party has to rule from the grassroots up. And sometimes that does mean that there is a place for negativity and criticism. Just one little thing to reflect on as October 1st rolls around. Thanks.